What's up, you lazy, entitled, basement-dwelling millennials, bootstrapping boomers, apathetic Xers, and goddamn Gen Z kids today? Our episode is Farmers Only Got Conned. Uh, we've got Will Westmoreland with us here today. If you are familiar on TikTok, he's kind of taken off here recently. He is a political organizer, but also a farmer who's made a splash, being a rural red state farmer who isn't completely fucking brain dead and spends every waking moment trying to shoot himself in the foot. Since before the election, which was when I started following him, he was explaining farm policies, how farmers have been hurt by Republican policies for decades and decades, and how the Trump administration was going to hurt them more if they voted for him. And now that the Nerd Reich has kind of gained power, we're in the find out portion of that, and he's still out there with more enthusiasm than I don't know how he can muster at this point, continuing to try to educate these people on what is happening and what is going to happen. Please just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from, how you got started with your whole social media account.
Yeah, you bet. So my name's Will Westmoreland. I live in Southwest Missouri, grew up here. I'll tell you what got me started. I started thinking politically very young. I was in a really bad farm accident as a kid. I grew up on a 640-acre farm. We raised cattle. And when I was 12, I got this atrophied arm right here caught in the power takeoff on a tractor. And it almost tore it off. And I kind of watched my family go through that whole thing of, laying on the ground for an hour and 40 minutes to wait for an ambulance, an hour to the hospital, mom having to worry about losing her job to come to the hospital every day. And even though I wouldn't say at an early age, like I understood that I was thinking politically, it sure as hell built a chip on my shoulder that as I got older and started to understand how things work, it kind of took me in that political direction. Graduated from high school. I was a good bullshitter, so I got a full ride to college and debate. And I went on to college, and then I just got my first job in politics in 1992, working for Slick Willie out in Ohio for the Clinton Gore campaign, and did a long stint in corporate America while I, was doing the political stuff. But about, 12 years ago, 14 years ago, I just decided that helping rural candidates is what I wanted to do full time. So I started my company, Highlander Political Strategies, and for the last 12, 14 years, I have been just focusing on getting rural center-left candidates elected, in the United States. And I'd say overall, I've been involved in politics a little over 30 years. I've been a local party county chair. I try to be just really upfront about the fact that I'm a Democrat, but don't let that fool you because I've got a lot of shit to say about my own party as well, so we're all good
You're in
there.
good company there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, those power takeoff stories, those are you can't be around farm community without hearing about somebody who's fucked around with a power takeoff and found
I
out.
only know
And I
one
mean,
other guy that got caught in one that lives, so I'm a lucky guy.
yeah, it's dangerous, and that's why farming's one of the dangerous. They like to tell you cops are such a dangerous, hard job, but farming's a top 10. Cops aren't even in the top 20, so
I'd
it's
say about every
it's the
five farmers you shake hands with, that hand's going to come at you like this. So,
yep, yep. No, that's true. Do you have something, Taylor?
No, I guess I was just saying thanks for hopping on, Will.
yeah,
It's nice to have you
yeah.
on the show. When I just noticed that you mentioned like center left candidates that you worked with for the most part, is that on purpose? Is that sort of what you feel is the most successful sort of kind of range of politics that you sort of dive into with the rural markets or metro areas? Or is that
Yeah,
just sort of
yeah.
your
It's
own
on
kind of
purpose. Yeah, yeah. That invisible chip on my shoulder, it didn't just come from that, but it came from being a poor kid. My dad died when I was 5 years old, and we took advantage of every government program out there. We lived in government housing. We got food stamps. I ate enough government cheese to, you know, give myself constipation for the rest of my life. And all that put a chip on my shoulder because I remember those crotchety old bastards standing in the food line behind my mom when she'd pull, we called it funny money. Back in the day, you didn't get a card, guys. You got this pretend money. It was like Monopoly money. And I just remember those old guys looking at my mom, telling her to get a job. And here she was working a full-time job, trying to go to college to make things better for us. So I've always been on that side of the fence. I've always leaned Democrat, and I've always been, center left. And the other thing I would say about it is I do get involved sometimes in, what I call urban races. Like I did all of the texting and phone calls for both Warnock and Ossoff's campaign down in Georgia, that kind of thing. But for the most part, the work I'm doing is in, Texas and Montana and, Missouri and in rural areas, trying to get rural candidates elected. And I don't tell everybody this because then my phone blows up with candidates in rural America that can't raise money, but I've probably donated maybe $500,000 over the last 10 years in free services, texting and calling and that kind of thing to candidates running in rural America. So I believe in it. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And we need obviously more people like you because a lack of organizers and people just willing to put in the time to get stuff done is kind of how we've gotten where we've gotten. And I think it was interesting what you were saying about having to rely on some of those government programs that are there to be a safety net for when things like that happen, and how your mom was working full time and you still can't make ends meet. And most of the vast majority of people who receive some sort of government assistance do work full time. They usually work more than 40 hours a week.
Yep.
And then the judgment that you get from people in a rural community like that, from the farm community. And the funny thing is like we all know, or we should know, that farmers are the biggest welfare queens in the country.
That's
right. They
and 6 out of the 10 people you walk by on your way to church on Sunday in a rural area are on some kind of welfare as well.
Yep.
I mean,
but
the
farmer...
queen of queens of welfare queens is the Walton family. With, right. That's what
they get paid all kinds of money not to grow shit. Yeah, you got it.
Right? Like they're the biggest recipients, right? But obviously farmers receive more than the average person.
The agriculture industry in general, because farmers get welfare, they get subsidized in a lot of ways that they don't even know they get subsidized. I mean,
Sure.
The government holds up their markets to make sure that they have markets to sell to at a price that doesn't, bankrupt them. The government makes sure that they have programs in place. They get the tax breaks for everything you do. Like you can go to a fleet farm here, and if you've got a farm card, you don't pay sales tax on anything you buy. You don't pay my property tax on both my properties, because they're both agriculture, half of what you'd be paying if you weren't. You get breaks on everything, and a lot of people, they don't like to look at that as, it's not a food stamp, so it's not welfare, but it is.
Now there is a reason for that, so I mean, like, it's not, I'm not against it, and I know you're not saying that either, but a little bit of recognition that we get a lot of help would be a good thing on the part of some farmers and ranchers,
Absolutely. Well, and then it's on top of that, like, the using those food stamps, everybody who uses those food stamps, that money goes into farmers' pockets.
It does,
right? I mean, like, that's a farm bill
SNAP,
program.
WIC, USAID, all of that, is built on a foundation of buying agricultural goods from farmers. Yes.
In a way, it's a really it takes a long way to get there, but essentially you're getting taxpayer funded, worker owned subsidies. So it's basically socialism in a really roundabout way, with the working class members of society who pay taxes then paying for other people in society to create goods for workers. So it's
and I think for the most part society has been okay with that, but here's what I think has changed. In the past, it's like John F. Kennedy said, the farmer can't control his inputs, he can't control his outputs, and he has to pay for freight both ways, right? That's a true statement. Farming, I would argue, is the most uncontrollable enterprise, out of everything we do in this country, okay? Short of being a weatherman or woman, right? And I think that in the past, everybody, even if they don't farm anymore, like you live on farmland, or we're 1 or 2 generations separated from being a farmer or rancher, right? So we've had this nostalgia and this romanticization about what it means to protect the farmer. So I think in the past, people have been okay with it because they know 250 million people around the world go to bed hungry every night, and it's the American farmer that feeds them. I think where that's changed is when we as farmers and ranchers started pointing the finger at everybody else. You're a freeloader. You're taking advantage of the system. You're using my hard-earned tax dollars, to live a certain lifestyle. That is hypocrisy, and nobody likes hypocrisy.
No, and that is funny, farmers talking about paying taxes when they're probably the least taxed people that are not a billionaire anyway. But and like, here's the thing. I do want to clarify that, like, when I call farmers welfare queens, it's tongue in cheek in the sense that, like, I absolutely believe in these subsidies. I think the whole subsidy structure needs to be rebuilt because we prop up a lot of agriculture industries that do not need to be propped up. And we have a very unsustainable farming structure because of outdated. Like, these policies were great in the 1930s when they were instituted. They're outdated, but they're still better than not having them. And this is what makes sure that food prices remain stable, because one year you could have a bumper crop and all of these farmers are going to not be able to sell their products for a profit, and they're going to go bankrupt. And then you don't have any farms the following year because all of them went bankrupt because, you had a great crop year, which is ironic too. The better you do, the worse you do as a farmer, right?
Yeah.
In that sense.
You still have them. They're just owned by Merrill Lynch and BlackRock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then what happens if all of them go bankrupt the next year? You don't have all that supply, and then the prices go through the roof, and that hurts the consumer. And it would be, and that's what used to happen, was you had this boom and bust of the farming industry. And so for us, those subsidies help make sure that we're paying a fair price all the time, and there's always going to be food at the grocery stores. So I'm not criticizing the subsidies. I am criticizing the fact that farmers are happy to take them and then criticize everybody else for But what we're so we know that they are the most heavily subsidized industry, like, arguably in the world. And what were some of the warning, and then foreign markets too. Obviously, we sell a ton of our agricultural products to foreign markets all over the world. And we've seen kind of the repercussions of if we fuck with those foreign markets. What was your biggest warnings kind of going into this election? Because that was the "we told you so" era. This was when we were telling them when you were telling them so. What were you telling them? What was the warning?
I mean, how often does your opponent how often does a football team? Well, I wonder if it didn't happen in this Super Bowl because my Chiefs played so badly, but how often does an opposing team give you their playbook months in advance? And that's what the Republicans did for us. They wrote everything down that they were going to do, and then they handed it to us and said, "Here you go." And we were dumb enough to believe that when Donald Trump says who he is or what he's going to do, that maybe or maybe not. I can't tell you how many farmers and ranchers I heard say, well, he's going to deport the criminals. He's not going to deport the agricultural workers. He's going to cut out the waste in government. He's not going to cut out the waste at the USDA. And by the way, his definition of waste is everything. Okay. So I knew what they were going to do because I knew 100% based on the fact that he had people working for him that wrote 2025 and all the other, mainline media that was out there that made it clear that was the case. I knew what he was going to do. And in that Project 2025, they do what they're always going to do, guys, right? If they're going to write a bill to destroy the air, they call it the Clean Air Act. If they're going to write a bill to destroy the water, they call it the Clean Water Act. In rural America, if they're going to give foreign companies and foreign governments the right to buy land here, they're going to call it the Right to Farm Act. And they're going to write a real flowery introduction to that gets us all fired up, and then they screw us. And that's what they're doing here. You look at Project 2025 and you go to the agricultural section, and it's 5 or 6 paragraphs of some of the most flowery, beautiful agricultural defense language I've ever read in my life. Well, if you keep reading, you see where the meat and potatoes is. They want to get rid of these subsidies. That's the first step. Then they want to go after crop insurance. Right now, you guys pay for, I don't use crop insurance, so all 3 of us pay 60% of the crop insurance cost in this country, and farmers pay the other 40%. And it protects us against 2 different types of things. It protects us against things like drought, damage from Mother Nature. Yeah, all that stuff. Anything that falls in that category. But it also, a lot of people don't know this, it affects us against price. It defends us against price drops too. So if there's tariffs and prices, plummet, we get these subsidies, plus we've got crop insurance to take care of it. So they're going after that next. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that inside the USDA, there's this organization called the Commodity Credit Corporation, which I wouldn't call it a bank. I'd call it more like your local mortgage broker. And they manage all this stuff. So what they want to do is they want to gut these programs, and then they want to take what's left. And Project 2025 says they want to move it over to Health and Human Services under Bobby Kennedy Jr. So you're seeing an elimination of these $10.5 billion that were in the Infrastructure Act for conservation programs. Like, I did use this once. I'm an agroforestry farmer. So I had a forestry plan done on my farm. I paid for it out of my pocket, and then I got a partial reimbursement for that, so that I could take the parts of my forest and move them back to savanna format, the natural state, because I could never grow anything on it, but the wrong plants were growing there to take it back to its natural state. Well, you need that because that produces shade. It processes, carbon dioxide, all these other things. So I warned them right out of the 2025 playbook. I did video after video after video telling them this is what they're going to do. The problem is it never showed up on their pages for all the things we know about.
I mean, I guess it's hard for me because you said you never show up on their pages, and you get a little bit of that that algorithm kind of echo chamber and bubble that it forces us into. But they had heard about it, and everybody just said, "Oh, he's not going to do Project 2025."
I'm just talking about my videos. Yeah, that's not a free pass for not doing your research. I mean, shit, man. Will Westmoreland ain't the only guy out there talking about this, right? So it was there. They knew about it because they were defending him.
So you were putting out all these warnings beforehand, and then obviously it didn't happen. And how could you, as a farmer, ever possibly have thought that dear leader Trump would ever betray his faithful farmers?
Well, part of it is we've got, and this is why this goes from the bottom up. The problem is we've got people like our elected congressional Republicans here in the state of Missouri that are going farmer to farmer, and our local elected officials are going farmer to farmer, and they're telling them this stuff they believe. Well, they're only going to go after the criminals. They're not going to go after the 50% of agricultural workers that are undocumented. They're not going to gut these programs. They're only going to gut the programs where drag queens get to read stories in libraries around the country, which, by the way, they did when I was a kid. And, so they're to blame too. But no, I'm not going to give anybody a pass. And that's why when we've all seen the video of the cattleman Skyler here in, Missouri that is being shorted $80,000 as of right now to get reimbursements for improvements he made. I did a video telling him, here's the reason why people are upset with you. And if you're willing to talk, I will. But I also made a point in that video to say, we're not going to sit on our laurels and wait for you to come over to our side. We're going to fight the good fight. And they did have a chance to do their research, and all that information was out there, and it's 100% on them that they didn't do the research and that they didn't believe that what we were telling them was true.
Well, it wasn't even that they didn't need to do the research, because everybody else told them, other people did the research for them. Other people read the playbook for them, and they're just nah, that's not going to happen. They wouldn't do that. But now the regime, it's been a few weeks since they've taken power, and the leopards are eating my face. And that's kind of where we're at. And so far, Skyler obviously kind of being the poster child of this at the moment. What have been the real world consequences so far? What right now actually in action is undermining the farmers? What is the find out portion for them at the moment?
Well, right now they're all being lied to, and they're being told, like Jason Smith, who's an elected Republican congressman. I did a video about him last night. They're lying to them and telling them it's all going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Well, what the hell kind of policy approach is that? That's just like your house is on fire and you call 911 and they just say, well, just hang up and sit down on your couch. It's all going to be okay. The biggest impact it's having right now, because in a lot of cases, these loans haven't come due yet, but they will come due in the spring. The biggest impact it's having is on planning. I mean, just think about it. You know how people are in your area. You got to go to your bank and you got to get a loan to buy the seed, the fertilizer, the pesticides, the fungicides, everything. If you're a big time row crop farmer, now I do organic with agroforestry, but if you're a big time row crop farmer, you got to go down to the bank and you've got to get all those inputs paid for. Well, I mean, number one, do you want to do that if you may not, be able to pay off these loans that you've got outstanding that the USDA said they were going to reimburse you for? And number two, is a bank going to give you that money if they know that you can't be solvent when the time to pay it back rolls around? So I think right now it's impacting the planning. Like, Skylar talked about, and he's not lying about this, it's true. If he doesn't get that $80,000, if he can't come up with another plan, then he's got to sell the money he set aside to buy hay with to make the payment, and he's got to sell part of his cow crop. Well, his cows, when they're bred, are what make his calves. So it'd be just like if you raise tomatoes, you got to sell all your tomato plants to pay the loan. You don't have anything else to raise tomatoes to pay the loan in the fall. So it's planning, and I'm telling you, food prices are already going up. I mean, I've seen your stuff, you know that. Futures are already going up, and it's and this is without the find out stage even hitting yet. This is just the worry that it's going to happen that's causing prices to go up.
Well,
that's speculation makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Like speculation is pretty hurtful, and especially in the short term. So unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, that's the biggest impact that we have seen yet. I mean, I don't think anybody here is going to really be wishing and hoping that things are going to get worse. We just have a pretty good educated guess that that's where we're heading.
Well, it's like when you're, dicking around by the hot stove when you were a kid, the wood stove, and your old grandpa just kind of sat in the corner with a smile on his face because he knew what was coming. But he also knew you had to go
moment
through.
Is about to
That's
happen.
exactly right. But he also knew you were going to have to go through that because then you'd learn don't ever touch a hot stove again. And man, I hate to see it happen. I really do. When I said on there I'm not an FAFO kind of guy, I really didn't mean because of the farmers themselves as much as I meant because of the ramifications it's going to have on single moms and kids and people that go to bed hungry right now. Everybody is going to pay the price for their lack of research.
No, that's absolutely, and I actually kind of wanted to talk about that here in a little bit. But as we were saying, we don't wish it's going to get worse, but common sense dictates that the worst is yet to come, right? And so all of what's happening right now with the inability to plan and farming completely revolves around planning, 6 months ahead and hoping that your best laid plans work out. What's next? Like, because it's only going to get worse unless, something major happens. So what is the biggest thing that we need to be worrying about coming up next?
Well, I think there's two scenarios here. One of them is really ugly and the other is just ugly. Okay. The really ugly scenario is that Trump doesn't cave in and, think, well, this is my voting block, so I'm going to go ahead and release these funds so they don't get any of this money. And then on top of that, and I hate to throw so many things out there at once, but you live in a rural area, it's all tied together. Then you got these tariffs out there. So, the problem is that not only can farmers not plan, but if they don't get this money, they're also playing ball in this tariff arena where we're losing markets. So look at it this way. China used to buy 14% of their row crops from Brazil. They now buy 43%. Those markets are never going to come back again, okay? So what do the Republicans who don't farm say? They say, well, just go find another market to sell it in, Well, great. Where could we do that? Well, we could do it here. Well, good luck getting 320 million Americans to buy the same amount of food as 2 billion Chinese. And then the second thing that is going to happen on top of that is all these programs that buy American agricultural products to feed our country through the SNAP program, the WIC program, the meal programs that go with Head Start, the conservation programs, all of that goes away. Then you lose another $1 billion in agricultural goods by canceling the USAID program. So you've taken away these programs and forced farmers to pay out of their pocket. You've taken away our biggest agricultural partner who's now tariffing us in reverse. And now you're canceling all the farmer agricultural product purchasing programs. Where the hell's the farm? I mean, are they supposed to go stand on the corner in France?
Yeah.
Where are you going to sell this stuff?
Right. It's not like they have access to like the international, like trade ability to like sell their, if they're a smallish farmer, they got 50 acres, like they're not going to sell directly to Canada, like they're not going to sell to like a small company in Italy. Like it's just not feasible.
Well, and by the way, boys, we're about to tariff Europe as well. So, and you're just not going to make up for it with farm to table. I mean, we all believe in farm to table, but you can't replace Walmart and Costco and Sam's Club overnight with farm to table. You just can't do it.
You can't replace China and Canada
Right.
and Mexico with farm to table either.
That's right.
I mean, like you're just, and that is one of the things that I just keeps blowing my mind is, oh, just buy American. And it's like, again, this is just basic numbers. We are 4% of the the global population. 4%. We're 20%, 26% of the global economy. You cannot make up 26% of the global economy with 4% of the population if you're not selling to people who are outside of your home population. And agricultural exports are one of our biggest exports. I think maybe even our biggest export. And I wanted to point out on USAID. I have somebody who knows somebody who works with one of those programs. 29 million people in one country alone, just in Ethiopia, are going to be negatively affected by this. I forget what the numbers are, but I think 10,000 people a month could die from malnutrition and malnutrition-related disease just because of us cutting that just in that one country. And that's again, that's think that we're feeding. And we're feeding, that's American farmers who are getting paid to feed those people through that program. That's people in my community who farm my land. That's where that stuff is going. And they cheered on cutting that aid. You don't want to help the other people. Well, guess who that's helping too? That's helping you. And that's
right. Yeah, I don't understand what they think who's gonna purchase that instead of USAID, instead of like. Who do you think is going to make up for this lack of consumption? It doesn't make any sense.
Do we have enough time for me to talk about the national security impacts of that as well? Because it's agricultural related.
Okay, you can talk about anything you want.
Yeah, and another thing that a lot of farmers and I don't think anybody knows this. Not a lot of people know this. For every dollar that we spend sending crops overseas as part of USAID, we save $7 in national security expenditures later on.
Right. Didn't somebody say didn't say we're going to replace, sending food, and now we're going to be sending bullets to all these places.
That's right. I'll give you an example. After the big tsunami, right, we had done a poll over, I think it was in Bangladesh. They had done a poll, and the results of that poll were, it was basically an American approval rating versus an Osama bin Laden approval rating. And before the tsunami, America was at 27%, Osama bin Laden was at 63%. The tsunami happens. And then we ship over billions of tons of food with that big, beautiful American flag on there, okay? And trucks with the American flag on it. Now, I recognize my country's problem, but in my heart, the thought of a truck pulling up and dumping out bags of rice and flour and water with that big, beautiful American flag on it, I'm not going to lie, it still gives me goosebumps. So after it was over, they reversed that. They do that same poll again, and the numbers had reversed exactly. Osama bin Laden was in the 20s in his approval rating, and the United States of America was in the 60s. This works. It's primarily designed to feed people and to help them when they're sick and to prevent poverty. But it also it works. It makes America a better place in the eyes of people around the world. And a lot of the terrorism that happens in this world is a direct result of the shitty things we do. And USAID is an example of one of the beautiful things that we do around the world.
Yeah, we have done a lot of bad things. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this show.
Yeah.
And it is nice when every once in a while we get to be the good guy, even though, in some of the cases, obviously not in natural disasters, but in plenty of the cases we're at least semi-responsible for the, destabilization of a particular region or country, and
We could
potentially
do a whole
roundabout,
show on why we have all these undocumented immigrants.
or
you
a
know?
direct way in that case.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. It definitely is nice, and especially when it's a act of God, as they say, and we can help those kind of people.
Well, and that's one of the things too, is like we are the country best set up to do this because our imperialism. This is one of the ways that our modern imperialism is a good thing, is we do logistics better than anybody in the history of the world, right? We can get anything anywhere in the world within a few hours. That's probably going to change with Hangover Hegseth up there running the show, but we're really good at getting stuff
That's
to
good.
places efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
And so when something like that does happen and people are just in need, and being the human thing to do is to help people in need, right? And we have the resources to do that, and we also have the logistical capabilities to do that. And so there's no reason we shouldn't be, because like you said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Mhm.
And that's what it is. Like, when people feel that they were taken care of, like, you're a lot less likely to go, suicide bomb a country that fed you and your family in your darkest hour. And man, it's just a
Yeah.
little bit of diplomacy, and that's all it is. It's diplomacy. It's
That's right.
It's
And it used to
when
mean something in rural America. Remember all the UNICEF commercials, what they were? Well, you guys don't remember. Hell, I keep forgetting you're young. But when I was a kid, the UNICEF commercials, that's what they showed. After they showed the kids that were hungry, they would show that, bag of sugar, bag of flour, bag of rice, whatever, with that big, beautiful American flag being dumped on,
no.
and, kids filling a big bowl of rice and food. And I mean, people would call that number and give that money, and it was based on
Mhm.
pride. We want to do
Yeah.
our part.
Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, and I don't want to make this about religion, but as a believer, I mean,
Mhm.
get off your ass and maybe live the Beatitudes a little bit. It wouldn't hurt you, you know.
Well, hey,
Right.
man, you're getting it from both sides. So you're a farmer who's trying not to be a hypocrite, surrounded by the people that we just
Yeah.
can't stand for the hypocrisy,
And I'm
then you're
waging war on Christian nationalists right now. Yeah, so I'm loving life.
man, you're just a glutton for punishment.
Hell, what are they going to do to me, guys? I'm just an old fart out here in the middle of nowhere. What are they going to do to me?
I'm just telling you, I don't know. I just can't imagine all the whips and chains in your closet there. That's
Yeah,
you must
yeah.
you like the
They're all on
masochism.
social media, my friend. Believe me. Yeah.
That was the first thing. The first thing that came to mind was some of these farmers, Republican conservative voters, mainly are Christian, and it baffles me that they are so devout, and everything about Christianity needs to be taught in schools, and we need to have the Ten Commandments instead of the Pledge of Allegiance and whatever, and not when it actually comes to putting your money where your mouth is and your time to helping people, all those Christian values just vanish.
Yeah. You know what I tell them when they say that, and this is just me being a vindictive asshole, is I tell them, okay, let's do that. And I'll tell you what we'll do. What we'll do is we'll cycle each religion through. So the first 2 years we'll pray Muslim prayers and read out of the Quran. The next 2 years we'll bring in Buddhist monks and let them teach our kids their religion. And then the next 2 years we'll do the Christian religion. Well, they look at you a little bit consternated when you recommend that, I mean, they're all about teaching their kids their religion, and the teachers teaching our kids their religion. But I don't want anybody else doing that. I taught my kids what my beliefs were, and then I said, now you decide on your own.
Well, we could always just ask a Bishop Buddy to come in and do some educational curriculum for the public
Boys,
schools.
I'm a proud Episcopalian, so I had a smile on my face for a week after that.
I mean, but that's it. Don't commit the sin of empathy. And it's like I'm fairly familiar with theology, and I don't remember that one in the list of 7 deadly sins there.
Well, it's kind of funny that, a bishop quotes out of the Bible and America becomes enraged at that, It's just like all these pastors in this survey that they did, And you've got all these living examples of pastors saying, I read the Beatitudes, I read the Sermon on the Mount, and people are coming up to this. Isn't just one of these, urban legends. This is really happening. I think it was Christianity Today that ran the article. People are coming up to him after the service saying, don't read that liberal shit here in church. We want to hear what's in the Bible, And it was the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor, blessed are the peacemakers. That's all you need to know. Of course, 48% of people, guys, that call themselves evangelical Christians right now, 48% of them only do that to check off the box for what it means to be a Republican or MAGA.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys knew that, but that was just polled recently. Yeah.
I believe it. I mean, I didn't know a specific percentage, but if you would have asked me to make up a percent, I probably would have went even a lot higher than that.
That's half.
So.
Half everybody walking out of that church door is only there because they know that that's, part of the act they have to play in order to call themselves MAGA.
Well, and part of it, too, is, like, when it comes to conspiracy theory groups like Flat Earthers, for example, a lot of these people don't truly believe that the planet's flat. They just like being part of an in-group. Yeah. And that's, I think, what has a lot to do with MAGA in general. Like,
100%.
There can't be this many fucking morons in the world. If there is, like, I mean, Darwin was wrong if this many people are that stupid, and so I think a lot of it is just, there's a human need to belong to something, and they're losers. I mean, in general, they tend to be losers. They're the people who aren't socially accepted. They're the people who can't find, people who want to see them naked, that kind of stuff. So they latch onto this group because it's an easy way to get an in. I just need to put on the hat and repeat the words, and I'm a part of the group, and I'm one of the cool kids now, and that's I think a big part of it.
And a lot of the white Christian nationalists like James Lee Dixon that leads Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn, they are part of the incel community. They're not celibate by choice. No. So even though what you said is hilarious, it's also very, very true, my friend.
Hey, stuff isn't, and this is why conservative humor is never funny, is because there has to be truth in humor to make it funny, right? And and I always get a kick out of, like, Republicans create these caricatures of what the left is, but then it never fits into that box, and so, like, it's never funny. You never see a funny conservative stand-up comedian. You never see, like, a funny conservative movie. Like, you get the Daily Wire putting out all this this shit that they are trying to become this media source and stuff like that, and none of it is ever entertaining, and it's because there has to be some sort of truth in it. And when you make up the the blue-haired gender studies liberal, that's not a thing that really exists. And then then they get hit with people like you and me and Thorin Bradley, who's out here splitting wood and the girls are creaming in their jeans over it. And he's like, I'm voting for Kamala because I'm not a fucking asshole.
I messaged Thorin and said I'd come out there and take off my shirt with him and split a little wood if that would help. But I think my daughter told me, Dad, no, don't do it.
I would pay for that. I would
It would be like that old Saturday Night Live skit with you remember with Chris Farley and you know who I'm talking about. They did the male stripper skit. Patrick Swayze. It would be very much like that. Yeah,
I would pay to see that. I would love that with all of my heart and soul. So I guess we've kind of covered this here, but my next bullet point was, how on earth did they fall for it? And I'm from Minnesota. This used to be dairy country. It was the dairy industry here died under Reagan, as agricultural industries all over the country did, and Republican farm policies just bankrupted and decimated this area as they did a lot of the heartland. And I wouldn't say that the farmers were ever, progressives or anything like that, but they were never dumb enough to be Republican. It's like they knew
buddy,
that
before you and I were born, they used to march in the streets in Minnesota and Kansas and Missouri and Nebraska for progressive issues because they knew the guys in those gilded houses up there thought that they were idiots and rubes. And they wanted to keep them in their sod huts. So at one time, our people, because I know they're your people too, at one time, our people were progressive and radical. listen, I've caught more heat from our side than from the other side. All right. I'm just going to be right up front with you. Whenever I say I'm willing to listen, all I'm trying to say is that this is 40 years of indoctrination that's been going on. They eliminated the fairness doctrine and they took the both sides coverage, out of the news. And then they replaced that with Fox News and talk radio. And you know what I mean? Go to a job site, you got a radio out in the middle with a battery in it, and it's playing back in the day, it was, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, and then the real nut jobs that came later on in the day. And there's 40 years of that happened. So it's not an excuse for them. It's an explanation as to how it happened. The problem is we don't have 40 years to fix it. So I feel like our primary focus needs to be on getting those 12 to 14 million people that believe like us that didn't vote to vote. And while we're at it, if we've got a little bit of extra time, when one of them comes to us and says, I screwed up, okay, and I know not everybody's willing to have that conversation, and I'm fine with that,
I get that too, and like I agree with especially like the Skylar age, because he's he looks like he's more closer to my age.
He is.
But it's all these. Sorry, the dogs are barking in the background. The mailman just left.
If I was at my farm right now, we wouldn't even have been able to do this because of dogs. So don't worry about it.
But like all these old fuckers, excuse my French, but like the people who lived through it, the ones they lived through the Reagan collapse of the farm industry. Yeah. Them, I'm like, I've got, and I would watch those old fuckers hobble into the fucking cafe in the morning, and order their eggs and coffee with their "Make America Great Again" hat on, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, where you knew what the Republican Party has done to you, and you're still supporting it again.
They're dead. I mean, it's hard for me to say this because I still view myself as that 18-year-old smartass on his way to college, and maybe that's why I'll live forever. But the truth is, in 1980, when Ronald Reagan was elected, if you were a guy with kids in school, you were 35, 45 years old, you're dead now. Those guys are gone. The problem is my generation, guys. We're the ones that grew up in high school with everybody telling us how great Ronald Reagan was, And I mean, I can remember the first debate I ever got into with a classmate in school was my senior year of high school. I was in a social studies class. I don't want to say much more because people around here watch my stuff, okay? But there were a couple of girls that basically started talking about these black welfare queens in Chicago and how they're drinking beer and eating steak, and I just went off on them, right? Well, the problem is my generation. It's Generation X. Though not all of them. A lot of them are progressive, and but the ones out in rural America, I've said many times to my kids, when everybody my age dies, you guys will be okay, But
there's
that's
a planet
the problem.
left to be okay on.
If we don't screw things up so badly that you can't survive. But that's the problem. And honestly, that's what I'm trying to do, because let's be honest, when a fat white guy with a close crop haircut, they're going to listen to me. The ones that are going to listen are going to listen to me. They don't want to hear, I don't know if you know Jess Piper. She's 10 times smarter than me on rural issues. She's a former school teacher. She goes to speak somewhere and half the room won't listen to her because she's a woman. So to your point, it's my generation. We are being intentionally ignorant, and Generation X has this, we've got this part of our personality that wants to believe that we're always right and everybody else is wrong. And I told my kids a long time ago, I said, I want you to make me 3 promises. Number 1, I don't ever want you to let me walk out of the house with barnacles on my head or toilet paper hanging out of my ass. Don't ever let me become that old man. I said, number 2, don't let me say stupid things in front of people that will offend. And number 3, if I ever get to the point where I don't know any of you, wheel me out into the woods on a cold winter night. And a lot of us don't understand that. We just aren't willing to change. And my God, it frustrates me more than anything else in this effort to try to change things. So, I don't know what to tell you guys. We got to change the minds that we can, and we got to there are more of us than there are of them. but we've got to get people that didn't vote to get up and vote. And that's where I've got the criticisms of our party,
Yeah, no,
or maybe I should
and
say my party. I don't want to paint everybody with the
well,
same
no, I mean
brush.
we're progressives. I wouldn't
Yeah,
say
yeah.
we're Democrats by necessity because it's the thing that
Yeah,
aligns
right, right,
most with the
right.
ideals that we want. But we would like something, Bernie Sanders, AOC is kind of getting more into the territory of where we'd like to see the middle be, I think. And
If it makes you guys feel any better, I've moved I've moved more in that direction here in the last 4 years than I was at any point in my life. I was a solid, kind of middle of the road Clinton Democrat for most of my life, but I got to tell you, we've got an oligarchy in this country, and that's what I'm trying to preach to the people my age, is that if you'll allow me the term, you youngsters are right, and we better, by God, listen,
Absolutely. I wanted to expand go ahead.
Yeah, that's what when you got on here, how do they fall for it? It's like, well, as Will mentioned, there's been 40 years of indoctrination, and there's been a concerted effort to target these groups of people by the conservative party, and the Democrats are like, yeah, you can have them, we don't need those votes. And
that's a true statement.
We lost from Obama to Clinton. The only thing that changed wasn't the metro voters, it was rural voters that shifted from Obama to Clinton. So,
well, and guys, to your point, they haven't had to feel the consequences. Why? Because we Democrats have bailed them out every time. We've got SNAP, we've got WIC, we've got Head Start, we've got subsidy programs. I don't want little kids to have to feel the pain, but I'd sure as hell like recognition out of the older folks that we have bailed them out and prevented the lifestyle that they would have lived if these policies would have been able to take their full effect on their lives.
Absolutely. Well, and part of this is on the Democrats, as they have not given any effort to the rural community. I mean, as a national party goes, we are I get it. Republicans pay attention to us.
Yeah.
They don't do anything for us. They actively fuck us over. They're paying attention to us because they're trying to grift us and con us, but they're paying attention to us.
But the foreplay is wonderful. I mean, the pre-talk is great, though.
Yeah, absolutely. They make me feel sexy. I'm not gonna lie, and that's they don't. They're cringy as fuck. But you get the point.
I'm a little excited though about your guy stepping up to run everything, because the elites, and I shouldn't say that, but the power people in the party, they were pushing another candidate there. They were going after the big fundraising money, and they were trying to get somebody else elected. And I was really proud of the people at the DNC, the rank and file people that stood up to that bullshit and said, no, we're going to elect somebody that can get back to the people and focus on rural America. And I think that's going to be a big win for us.
Honestly, I think there's enough people in the Democratic Party ready to take Pelosi out, to the farm up north, because they're so sick of it's her and her ilk that have handed us Donald Trump. They're responsible for this. And they continue to not.
Steny Hoyer.
Steny Hoyer.
Yeah.
The perfect scenario would be you guys keep raising money and let these other people that know what's happening out here run, pick the candidates and run the, not pick the candidates in the sense that we nominate people we want, but, sometimes for a middle of the road or progressive candidate running in a rural area, they don't even run because they know they're not going to get any support. If we just made a minimal commitment to people that run in rural areas, that we will help you get your word out with this amount of money and this amount of effort, people would start to run. But shit, why would you want to dedicate 2 years of your life to something and then get beat 81 to 19%?
Right. Well, and a lot of people out here that are the progressive people that want to do it, the only people who have the fire under their ass to run in a district that's probably unwinnable, is the people who have full-time jobs and are maybe in school and, have a family they're trying to raise. And running for probably better than anybody, running for any political office is a full-time job.
I sit on a PAC that, we're helping out in the special elections in Florida and in New York. And I'll tell you guys, you can't even start talking about a congressional race unless you're willing to raise, you have to raise $1 million just to get people to look at you, to start giving you the real money that you need, which is 5, 10, 15 million. And just to run for a state senator in Minnesota or Missouri, you're going to have to raise $250,000 if you want to get your message out. So that's where the Democratic Party could help, is to make a commitment, because people would give, like people like us in rural areas, we would donate that money if we knew it was going to be spent on those races. And I don't ever remember him doing that. I mean, we've got a rural caucus and we dance around the edges of everything, but I can't ever remember them saying,
"Oh, I will never donate to the Democratic Party ever again. I will donate specifically to candidates directly, ideally cash from my wallet to their hand. But I will never, ever donate to the Democratic Party again because of all of this. And then because of the fact that Nancy Pelosi has the audacity to text us all immediately after they lost the election when we gave them $1 billion to win the fucking election to Donald Trump. It's like, and again, this is why Nancy Pelosi, why they haven't wheelchaired her ass out, out back is beyond me. But
I saved it on my phone, guys. I still have that text on my phone. I really do.
Honestly, I probably should keep it as well. I mean, the reason why the Democratic Party keeps her is because she maintains the status quo and is really good at controlled opposition. And as long as the donor class keeps funding the Democratic Party and the oligarchs who aren't like crazy MAGA people, or at least pretend to be, that are funding the DNC, they're okay. They're okay with not being the party of change, and they're never going to be the party of change as long as they're taking money from billionaires, because that's antithetical to what the billionaires want.
And Obama was the perfect example of that. He ran on ending Citizens United, and then at the time raised more money via Citizens United than any candidate in history. And then suddenly he's like, oh, maybe this shit ain't so bad. And suddenly getting rid of Citizens United was never a priority.
At least
anymore.
Take it on, right? Like, I don't know where I fall on the whole scale of, do you set the moral example and then get your ass kicked everywhere because you don't have enough money? But at least at a minimum, like the argument I've been making is, name one piece of legislation that became a stalwart column in the Democratic Party to get rid of corporations being people. We're not fighting that battle at all in the Democratic Party. So at a minimum, we ought to at least be able to expect that. And you know what? Nancy in her day, she was great at playing the congressional game, but her people elected her, not us. So I don't like, people that were elected from anywhere else telling me in my state which candidates we need to select, to run for national office. And I think more than anything else, that's what pissed off, the Bernie people that we invited into our party, is that, they came in because they wanted to upset the apple cart. And then we told them, hey guys, welcome, now play by the same set of rules we have, but I could be wrong. So.
No, you're absolutely right. We've talked about that. I mean, the Democratic Party failed so hard on the Bernie thing with, actively trying to sabotage his campaign left and right, getting caught trying to sabotage it to the point where Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down. And all Hillary had to do at that point was just say, this was wrong. The Democratic Party should be holding itself to higher standards than this, and just leave it at that. But what does she do? The opposite. She hires Debbie Wasserman Schultz to manage her campaign. And it's like you're actively looking at us and being like, hey, you need to vote for us, and we're gonna spit in your face the entire time you do it. And still Bernie voters turned out at a higher rate for Hillary than Hillary voters in the primary turned out for Obama. So, and then they still try to blame it on them. They do the best they can to shoot themselves in the foot and alienate every single person who isn't a party line Democrat, and then they turn around and complain and blame the people that they literally shot. It's like that meme where he's shooting the guy behind him and like, why would they do this?
Well, we're going to cover Thursday on TikTok. We're going to do a live, and a good friend of mine, Andrew Short, he's a political consultant out in Colorado. He's part of the LGBTQ community, and he just did a great poll breaking down Democratic attitudes toward the Democratic Party. And I'll tell you what, when I opened this poll up and took a look at it, there is no doubt that the Democrats, they have lost the trust of the American people on being the party of working people. And I think a lot of people, are going to be shocked when they come into that live and they hear this polling data,
Yeah, I mean, maybe they will. I know that none of us here would be shocked. I can't You know, and again, obviously, all of us who have spent the time putting our neck out and our face
Yeah.
on our face and name on the line. It's not like the Republicans where they're paying all of these influencers and everything to toe the line and send out the propaganda. We're just out here doing it because it's like, hey, this is
Yeah.
what we believe is the best thing
Right.
for the people in our country, for our neighbors. And we're like, so we're going to bat for you, and you don't even have the decency to, you know,
Well,
call
and
it
I'm
rain
with you
when you're
guys.
pissing on us.
That's what motivates me. I mean, I'll tell you, I'd say this all the time. I've got 3 granddaughters. I have a daughter. I've got 5 grandkids, but my white grandsons will be fine. But I've got 3 granddaughters, and I'm just, God dang, boys. If I close my eyes for the last time, and my last thought before I go meet my maker is that my granddaughters are growing up in this world, holy shit, that's going to be bad. So I'm going to do everything I can I've got, I'm not like you boys. I got less time in front of me than I have behind me. So I'm going to fight like hell to try to make this change. And we've all got to work together to do it. But that means accountability too. We've got to be our own worst critics, and we've got to make these changes that you're talking about.
Yep.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
If reform is not going to come from the outside, it has to come from the inside. If there's going to be reform at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it happening. I really do. Because your voices are becoming louder. And there are people like me. Like I was never actively anti anybody, okay? But I had my beliefs. I had my set of beliefs that were based on 30 years of doing this. But after Trump's first term, I was honest enough with myself to say, hey, these young people, they're right. This isn't just a different kind of politics. This is an oligarchy. This is Russia level bullshit. And I don't say that lightly because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I regularly have ridiculed my entire life people I view as conspiracy theorists, but this is not a conspiracy. This is happening. It's right out of the Hungarian playbook. And I think they're trying to do the same thing here. I was telling somebody the other day, it's like Jurassic Park. There's a scene in every movie where the velociraptors try to test the fence, right? It'll always be the English actor, and he'll say they're testing the fence. That's what these guys were doing in the first term, and this time they came ready to play.
Well, and that's part of like so falling for it the first time I get, but then going back to how did the farmers fall for it again? Because the very first time around, Donald Trump fucked the farmers. Like, almost, and granted, he wrote them their big welfare check and said, here you go.
And then Joe Biden,
whatever,
because he didn't want him to go under, did the same thing for 2 years. They never felt the pain.
But they knew it. They saw him put the tariffs on. They saw their markets evaporate. They saw that they had all of this grain and pork products that they were sitting on that they couldn't get rid of. And then sure, so he wrote him some handouts. He wrote him some checks, and then they just like, what? Okay, everything's good now. We'll vote for you a second time when you're already talking about doing the same. He said he was going to do all these same tariffs again plus some. And they still fell for it again. And I mean, I just don't understand how you fall for that twice. Like, everybody was around then.
You're right. I'm not going to defend that. I mean, because I agree with you 100%. But all of us that grew up in a rural area, we've got a grandma or a grandpa that at one point or another, somebody that maybe lived through the Depression or knew somebody who did, that told us in one version or another, they've got us fighting for crumbs under the table while they're eating steak up above. And the same exact thing happened this time. Orban used immigration to pit, society against itself over there. And that's what they did this time. Well,
they love Orban. They're using him as their role model.
They love him. Help me out, boys. What did Lyndon Johnson say? He said, if you can convince the lowliest white man that he's better than a black man, he'll empty his pockets out for you. It's going on today. They've just replaced African Americans with people from South America.
No, they didn't replace it. They just added South American and Mexican. Yeah, they're still trying to convince them that they're better than the black people.
Sorry to all my African American friends. I just emancipated everybody in one sentence. And you're right. You're right.
No, they haven't replaced it. They're just adding onto the pile. You're better than the trans people and the gay people and the women and the Mexicans, and you're still better than the blacks too. Like you're better than everybody. just vote for us, and we'll let you
Yeah.
feel that way, you know.
And they
then,
used to say
we'll,
better
we'll-
than the poor people, but now so many people in rural America are poor, they can't say that anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we know, like, a lot of farmers are now realizing that they've fucked up, and they're wondering what they can do,
It's a
and
whole
a
trend on
lot.
social media, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything they can do at this point that you know of? I mean, you're probably more qualified to give some guidance on it than anybody.
You just really want my inbox to be filled up with our allies telling me I need to quit messing with these people. So, all right. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. I stepped out onto this plank all by myself.
Hey, we're right there with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think there is something that they can do, because if you and I start out just giving them a little bit of grace, and I don't mean grace in the religious sense, I just mean grace
Mhm.
in the, okay, you're coming to me with your mea culpa, I'm going to listen to you. If we can then, this is the important part for me, I'd love to see them admit they were wrong. If they won't do that, if they'll just at least admit they were lied to, and they'll turn around and start helping us tell that story, they're going to convince that guy that they used to sit down and have breakfast with at the coffee shop every Saturday a lot easier than you or I are going to convince them. You know, a lot of them listen to me, but then the minute they find out I'm a Democrat, they shut me off. But that former MAGA guy, you know, if he sits down and talks with them and says, listen, this guy's screwing us over, and we gotta start pushing back against this. That's their role in this. So I'm not going to be, you know, anybody can make a video saying he lied to me. If you want me to be impressed, then you stand up shoulder to shoulder with me and you start working against him. If they don't do that, well then, you know, you're just pissing down my leg and telling me it's raining, you know.
You know. And so I guess an extension of that, because a lot of us are in that boat where it's, you know, it's hard to have sympathy.
Yeah.
These people had Trump signs hanging on their silos and hanging them up on hay bales, and, you know, big hand painted ones at the end of their driveway.
Listen,
and
boys,
I mean,
my office I had in my little rural town at one time, every single Thursday afternoon during the first election, they would drive 50 pickup trucks around the square with all those flags on there. And my big German Shepherd would just bark at them like, you know, he knew what they were. So I get it, you know, I get it. I do.
he's German. He knows what a fascist looks like.
100%. Yeah.
But you know, so, like, it's hard for us to have sympathy, especially, you know, like, us in this rural community where, like, we've been trying. We saw them get fucked over the first time and said, "Thank you, sir. Can I have some more?" And now we're really seeing him getting fucked over. And it's like, well, you know, you touch a hot stove, you end up burned. You know, this is your teachable moment. Unfortunately,
And
we're
then
all
you're
getting
touching it
burned
again.
with you because you burned down the whole goddamn house in the process. But because of that, because we can't just go full fuck around and find out, because we're all finding out with them, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah.
Is there anything we can do to help at this point? You know,
what I've been trying to get him to do is whenever somebody, probably 5-7 times a week, I don't want to lie, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it's overwhelming numbers, but about 5 or 7 times a week, I'll get a message from a Republican farmer or rancher saying one of two things. Thank you for putting this material out there in a communication style I can understand. And then sometimes it does evolve into I was wrong. And when they ask that same question that you just asked, I said a first good step is to start talking to the people around you that believe the way you do and tell them you were lied to. Don't ask them to admit they were wrong. You know, don't make that the litmus test for somebody trying to tell you. When they tell you they screwed up, they're telling you they're wrong, okay?
Yeah.
As
You're
much
a bigger
as
man
I
than
want to,
me. I need to hear those words.
I was just going to say, as much as I want to taste the sweet nectar of that victory, for me, and everybody's got to make their own personal decision when it comes to this, right? There are going to be people out there that are taking on MAGA face to face. There are going to be people like me that are, you know, trying to talk with them while they're doing that. But my big thing is the litmus test for me with them is going to be, are you going to join us to push back? And that's a line that I'm not going to blur. If you're not willing to do that, then really all you're doing is just bitching about the fact you got burned.
Yeah.
That's like
And
the
asking
cheater
for more handouts. Help me not lose
Right.
the farm that I voted for to
Right.
lose. And
It's
I think that's
one of my
right.
kids said it's like the cheater that's pissed off that they got caught. They're not going to change their ways. They're just pissed that they got caught. So for me, guys, that's going to be the litmus test. If you think you did the wrong thing, then you stand shoulder to shoulder with me and you tell that to the people out there that believe like you do. If you're not going to do that, then you're just noise.
Yeah, and I think probably the most effective message, and if we're thinking like truly long term here, and can we not just shift from Trump to, a John McCain, Mitt Romney type person to a true progressive type economic policy effort, which I think we all agree would benefit the most people around the world, certainly all Americans the most, is not only saying like, yeah, you were lied to, and this is why you should be for these progressive policies. This is the class consciousness that you should be aware of when you're hearing what these people are telling you. And I think if we frame it in this class consciousness way, which I know a lot of conservatives are also thinking about in the back of their mind when they're not, thinking about immigrants, and they're not thinking about, all these people, all this money that we're sending across the world. They're thinking about themselves in class terms. It may not be in the forefront of their minds, but they can understand it, and certainly we can discuss it in a way that they can understand. And I think this MAGA movement, in a way, is giving us the greatest opportunity we've had since FDR, and actually showing like this is so blatant that these oligarchs, these billionaires.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, because I believe the same thing. This to me is right before FDR got elected during the Great Depression. This is the type of opportunity we have. And you're right, they'll understand it. Now, I don't want to lie to you guys. There's going to be a certain ilk my age that they're not going to understand class warfare and that type of thing. But they will understand, what would your granddaddy say if he saw you carrying water for Elon Musk? So, I agree with you 100%. I think if we do this the right way, and for any of them willing to join us in the fight, again, that's my litmus test. Any of them willing to join us in the fight, this could be the greatest opportunity we've ever had to get back to progressive policies for rural America in this country than we've ever had. And I hope that's what happens.
I mean, that's the best case scenario. There's a lot of more likely scenarios, unfortunately, but all we can do is be optimists, right?
Yeah. I'm the eternal optimist, guys. I'm a farmer.
So much rain coming.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we better start doing rain dances soon, because it's
maybe Bradley and I can do. Maybe Bradley and I can do that, a rain dance.
I like it.
There
I
we
like
go. I probably shouldn't. That might get some cultural appropriation points against you there.
I was just thinking though, boys, you got me thinking. If I did a video with Thorin and it went viral, I could say I was part of one of the most viral thirst videos ever produced in this country.
That is
true. That'd be something to hang over my kid's head.
That would be. Would be. I'd get myself a plaque made up or something.
Yeah, that's some cred right there.
You better edit that out of the podcast, because I don't want people to go to bed.
I think.
See, they're going to hear this. And then you'll get the viral upswell of followers tagging
the pressure. All right, I'm not taking my shirt off.
Him.
Yeah. I'll
wear
one of those old school nude colored T-shirts, but this shirt ain't coming off. I told somebody the other day, I'll never get naked in front of anybody I haven't already gotten naked in front of. So,
hey, this is the first time for everything, right?
There you go. Yeah. There you go, guys. Yeah.
You never know. I really appreciate you, especially as last minute as you did coming on today, Will. This has been a great conversation,
right time, man. Have you ever just been not doing anything? That never happens, and you hit me at the right time. So,
especially when you're a farmer, So, and a political activist.
It's shitty down here. I'm not going to tell you what I'm bitching about weather-wise, because being from Minnesota, you'd laugh me out of the house. But we do have 2 inches of snow out on the ground, so.
Oh yeah, we've got 2 inches under our other 6 inches right now, and it's
that's good. No, listen, I'm really glad you're talking about this. Today. Yeah, 0. Well, okay, I'll shut up. No, I'm really glad you're doing this, and I just want to challenge some of the older farmers out there. I mean, I'm 57. I haven't just magically believe these things as I've gotten older. I've made a point out of surrounding myself with younger people that work for me, my kids. Just listen to them. You don't have to agree across the board, but just listen to them, because you know what? I was your age once and I was full of piss and vinegar and I wanted to make a difference in the world. And we lose that as we get older, guys. So give us a little bit of grace. And that my challenge to older people is listen to these guys, these young people that are out there. They know what they're talking about. And if you will, we'll all be better off.
And I appreciate you saying that too, because I think it's an excellent point. Being younger, the older generation, especially, the boomer generation by and large, has spent our entire lives talking down to us and like, oh, we are the authority on everything, and you need to.
If it makes you feel any better, they still talk down to Gen X too. So
yeah, no, they talk down to everybody. They talk down to their they still talk down to their parents too. So it's one of those things where we appreciate that, because being this generation and trying to explain what it's like to live in a world that they never grew up in. They've never lived in the world that younger people live in. Even a lot of Gen X lives in. They don't understand. You're not cutting coffee out of your diet and paying for a house anymore. Like, that's not the way it works. And you're not raising a kid with 2 full-time working parents and no childcare, and childcare that costs as much as a full-time salary and stuff like that. So having people our parents' age tell their peers that they need to understand that we have things that we need to explain to them about what's going on in the world right now that they just don't understand because they haven't had to live it is appreciated. And I hope a lot more people your age do that, because we need people younger than us now at this point taking the reins and doing that.
Generational leadership only works if all generations are involved. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's been studied to the end of the earth, and that's how it works. And I hope people listen too. And you guys are doing a great job. And hell, I said yes immediately because I wanted to be a part of what you were doing. So thanks for that opportunity.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciated you jumping in that live yesterday too and everything. So thank you so much. I'm glad that we connected and we're a part of each other's communities now, and hope to have you back on again when we find out kind of more what the future has in store for us in the agricultural community and just the world in general. You bet.
I'd be happy to.
You've been doing great work out there.
Thank you.
I think giving a new voice and a different voice, the right voice to a demographic that doesn't get spoken to the way that you speak to them a lot. And it's really important work that you're doing. And I'm every follower you have and every person you've reached so far is hard earned and well earned. And if anybody doesn't follow him, I'll let you do your own little plug here. Every place, every project you're working on, any place that they can follow you, you let them know.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to talk about too, because this old fart's trying to figure everything else out right now. The Insta what? No, right now I'm on TikTok at Westmoreland Pops, and I'm also over on YouTube at Westmoreland Pops. And since we all don't know what's going to happen on TikTok, I've been trying to push more and more media over to YouTube because my videos are a little bit longer. So I'll just toss those two out there, and thanks for letting me do that.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely worth to follow.
Thanks for coming on for sure. It's been a great pleasure. And I do want to somewhat apologize for your Chiefs losing. But I do want to say,
guys, I thought we might get through the entire podcast without that coming up.
I just say it was an extremely enjoyable Super Bowl for me to watch.
I have a feeling you're not alone. Yeah. You notice I'm wearing my Sporting Kansas City hat today.
I noticed you changed up the hats.
The Chiefs hat's hanging on the hook in there until spring football.
I bet it is.
Yeah. No, I earned that. I earned that by ending my videos "Go Chiefs" for a while there. Yeah, I earned all the abuse I'm getting right now.
It's all good. We do it as Viking fans too. So appreciate you coming on. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks a lot, guys. You bet.
Yep, and thank you to everybody in the comments who hung out with us. If you are listening to this in the recorded version, we do record this live on YouTube, so you can kind of participate, and we sort of read through the comments and occasionally take a little bit of information from them. But we appreciate you guys hanging out. Once again, go follow Will on TikTok and here on YouTube, and we appreciate you, and we will see you next week.
That's right. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.